Hey everybody, welcome to the wonderful world of wind sports, where unlike other sports you may participate in that are powered by gravity, a wave, or some external propulsion method, we're actually powered by the force of the wind. What that means for wind sports is that we are conditions-based sport, which means you need the right conditions in order to go out and practice your sport. Because now your happiness is going to be tied to whether it's windy or not, it's really important to familiarize yourself with the wind and weather a little bit more than you may in your normal life. So whether you're a never ever wind sporter or coming from another sport that involves the wind or the hydrofoil, we need to make sure that we all are understanding the same terminology and to know when to go out and practice our wind sport for success and when not to. So in this module, we're gonna be going over everything wind. That means we're gonna learn about all the terms related to the wind and how we use the wind to practice our sport. So let's get started. So in order for us to all understand each other, we need to be all speaking the same language. So we're gonna talk about some general terms in relation to the wind. Now, most of these terms have to do with the relation of either yourself and your direction of travel or the wind in its relation to land. So the very first two terms we're gonna go ahead and learn at the same time are upwind and downwind. Those two terms have to do with your direction of travel in relation to the direction of the wind. So if the wind is at my back, which it often is in wind sports, upwind is going to be behind me or into the wind. If I've got the wind to my back, downwind is gonna be anything in front of me or with the wind, down away from where the wind is going. Again, upwind is into the wind or up into the wind, and downwind is gonna be all the space in front of you going with the wind down in space in front of you. Those two terms are important because we're gonna be moving around a lot and we're gonna be talking about putting your wing upwind, putting your board upwind, going upwind. So these terms are really important. So the first two terms had to do with your relation of direction in terms of the wind. The next two terms are gonna be your relation on the water. Most of the time when you're actively participating in your wind sport, you're actually gonna be traveling across the wind in what we call a reach. So a reach is when you're moving perpendicular to the wind direction. That means if the wind is going straight into the camera, I would be moving to the left or the right out of the screen, however you want to look at it. The two terms we're going to be talking about here are starboard reach and port reach. A port reach is going to be a line across the wind, traveling across the wind, perpendicular to the wind direction in the left-hand direction. A starboard reach is going to be crossing the wind forward, across the wind, perpendicular to the wind direction, going to the right. So again, we have our port reach going to the left and our starboard reach going to the right. So quick refresher, upwind's that way, downwind's that way, starboard reach is this way, port reach is this way. So that's all of my relation in moving in terms of the direction of the wind. The next set of terms is going to be the wind as its relation to the shoreline. So as that we're practicing our wind sports in the water, there's gonna be a shoreline to the water. And it's important that we understand the wind direction in terms of that shoreline. So we're gonna be talking about the terms onshore wind, offshore wind, and sideshore wind. As you can imagine, an onshore wind is going to be a wind that's blowing onto the shore. An offshore wind is going to be a wind that's blowing off of the shore, and a side shore wind is going to be wind that is blowing perpendicular to the shore direction. Those three things are really important when you're talking about wind and water safety, as well as good conditions for practicing. You want to understand those terms fully and make sure that your spot is appropriate in those terms to practice your water sport. Now, the final set of generic wind terms that we need to understand has to do with the wind quality and strength. So when we talk about wind, we're talking about wind speed. And wind speed is defined as the average wind speed of the wind over a given amount of time. Now, wind is hardly ever consistent, meaning it's never just 20 miles an hour square off. It always has what we like to call a gust or a peak wind speed, a lull, or a lowest wind speed, and then an average wind speed in the middle. So when we're talking about wind, we could potentially say it's 15 to 20, averaging 18. We have a 5 mile an hour spread in between our gust and our lull, and we have our average in between. This becomes really important when we're seeking out good quality conditions, and it becomes really important, again, that you understand these terms and when it's important to apply those terms to have quality sessions on the water. The final term in this bracket is how you define that wind speed. You can define wind speed in mostly 3 ways. It's gonna be in knots, miles an hour, or kilometers per hour. Make sure you know what your wind reading is, because 14 miles an hour is not the same strength as 14 kilometers per hour or 14 knots. So you wanna make sure you know what each of those wind terms are, and you wanna make sure that you know what wind you're looking at and relate it to what speed you have.
If you're serious about learning to foil, you're gonna wanna check out foilacademy.com, where you'll find over 60 modules of completely free content, all taught by Slingshot's master foil instructors. It's your one-stop shop for all things learn to foil.
So now that we know a little bit about some general wind terms, let's start breaking the wind down into its components. And the components of the wind are its speed, its power, its quality, and its direction. First and foremost, we're gonna be talking about wind speed. Now, I like to break wind down into kind of 3 categories. We're talking light wind, moderate wind, and strong wind. For me, light wind is gonna be anywhere from about 10 to 15 miles an hour, or let's say 8 to 14 knots. That is a light breeze. You're gonna be able to practice your sport, but you're not gonna be out of control. You're gonna be using larger gear, and the wind speed is not gonna be considered that strong. Moderate wind speeds, we're talking 15 to 20 miles an hour, or about 12 to 18 knots. This is where things start to get a little bit more fun. You got a little bit more power, and if you're standing at the beach, it might ruin your day at the beach because it's a windy day. It's not a lay at the beach day, right? So this is where wind sports start to step up. And then finally, there's strong wind, which I consider anything from about 20 to 30 is strong. Anything 30 plus is considered extremely strong. So you wanna think about your wind in those 3 categories. Are we talking about light wind, again, 10 to 15 miles an hour, moderate wind, 15 to 20 miles an hour, or strong wind, which is gonna be 20 to 25, 25 to 30, and then there's that extreme strong category above 30 plus. So those are your wind speeds, and that's kind of what you want to generalize so you understand those 3 basic categories. So now we've talked about the speed and the power of the wind. The next really important thing we need to talk about is the direction of the wind. Not all wind is created equally. So it's really important that we understand what the wind directions that could possibly be and what those are good for in terms of our wind sport. So let's go ahead and start with the most basic, which is going to be an onshore wind. I have the land over here on this side. I have the water over here on this side. So in this case, a onshore wind would be wind that's flowing from the water to the land, and we'll do a direct onshore wind speed. So that would be an arrow looking like this, indicating that the wind flow is directly onto the beach. Now, the good thing about onshore winds, they're extremely safe. They push you back onto the beach, so therefore you don't have any water safety issues. They also have a long ways to blow over open water, which means the quality of the wind is often gonna be better in onshore winds than some of the other wind directions that we could potentially have. So that's onshore wind flow. The next, to keep it simple, is gonna be the exact opposite of that. That's gonna be our offshore wind flow. So again, if we have the land this way and we have the water out here, we have the wind blowing from the right to the left. Now, some of the problems with offshore wind that I see right away is it's blowing offshore. So if you cannot stay upwind, which you won't be able to in the very beginning, this prevents a this presents a possible safety hazard in which it could blow you offshore out into the ocean, unable to get back to the land for safety.
If you're enjoying this content and looking to up-level your learning, you're gonna wanna check out foilacademy.com, where you'll find over 60 modules covering 4 sports, all taught by Slingshot's master instructors. On our comprehensive and structured learning platform, you can track your progress, engage with the foil community, and learn at your own pace, all from the comfort of your own home. Best of all, it's completely free.
So we're gonna go ahead and say in the beginning, onshore winds are way more favorable for practicing than offshore winds. Going down the line a little bit further, we have what we like to call side shore winds. So that can be wind that flows or parallel to the direction of the shoreline. So we could either have wind that blows from the bottom of the page up towards the top, or we could have wind that's blowing from the top of the page blowing down to the bottom. Either is okay, they're both considered side shore wind. Great thing about side shore wind is it's clean again because it's coming over the water. It allows you to do your tacks out and back and practice getting safely in and out of the water. It also allows you to cover ground downwind and upwind. Side shore is considered one of the best wind options you can get for practicing your sport. Now the final 2 wind directions are going to be side onshore wind, meaning the wind is blowing some component of side shore and some component of onshore, thus giving us side onshore wind. It can come in a variety of angles in relation to the land. Could be this angle, this angle, this angle, here, all this range here, and each have their little subtle nuances depending on the spot. Side onshore is also considered an extremely safe and comfortable wind for practicing your wind sport. The final wind speed direction that we have is side offshore. So just like side onshore, it's split by a component of side shore and offshore wind, meaning the wind is blowing, again, still offshore. So side offshore, while it may clean the wave faces and be good for things later down the line in your career, in the beginning, side offshore winds are gonna present that same safety hazard that you had with straight offshore winds, in that you're gonna end up getting blown out to sea, thus potentially causing a water safety issue. So those are the main winds, again, onshore, offshore, side shore, side onshore, or side offshore. Make sure you familiarize yourself with each of those wind directions, the pros and cons for your spot and your sport, and that'll help you assess whether today is gonna be a good day to practice your wind sport or a good day to hang out on the beach. So we've defined the direction of the wind, the speed of the wind, and assessed the power of the wind. The final thing we need to assess on the wind is the quality of the wind. Now this goes back to what we were talking about in the earlier module about the gust and lull. So if you have, let's say, a wind range of, let's go 15 to 18, averaging 17. You have a really tight spread in between the lull and the gust, and you have a really smooth average. That's gonna be really smooth wind. It's gonna be dreamy. It's probably gonna be warm. However, if you start to see 10 miles an hour or more between the gust and the lull, meaning like you're looking at 10 to 20, averaging 15, it becomes harder to pick the right size gear, and the wind quality is greatly degraded. So when you're looking for conditions that are gonna set you up for success, you're looking for smooth, laminar wind flow. And the way you find that is by practicing in either onshore conditions or side onshore, side shore conditions. That means there's not a lot of obstacles in the wind's way when it's getting to the beach, meaning it's gonna be smooth and clean. You'll find that offshore winds or inland lakes or hotels or anything with large structure around the wind is gonna make the wind swirl and become unreliable and unpredictable. So again, you're looking for onshore, side shore, or side onshore conditions, and you're looking for wind that has a really tight spread. Now you may also find that in warmer climates, the air is a lot more like a hairdryer, and in colder climates, it's a lot more dense and strong. So for those of you that are gonna be practicing in cold water environments, be prepared for the power of the wind to be more powerful for the same wind speed than a hot climate environment. And again, that has to do with the quality of the wind. That's speed, direction, quality, and power. Once you know all 4 of those things about the wind, you can make a decision on what gear to get, where you're going practicing, and set yourself up for the most success on the water. So you may be asking yourself, Brandon, how do I know all this stuff? Like, how do I figure out the wind direction and the wind speed? Like, I'm a never ever, what am I doing here? And there are a few key things that you can use to help figure it out. The first one is use your eyes, look around, look for blowing trees, blowing sand, white caps on the water, other people practicing wind sports on the water, and also look as to the relation of the wind direction to the shoreline. Don't just take a quick glance at it and be like, oh yeah, that's what it is, okay, go get your stuff. You may wanna sit down at the beach for 5 minutes, get an idea of what the day looks like, maybe talk to someone that just came off the water and ask them, hey, what size gear were you on? How good are you at doing your sport that you're doing? That'll help start to build up this information log of what wind speeds you need, what gear you should be riding, and when it's good to go on the water and when it's not. Before you even plan on going to the beach, open your computer or smartphone, get on either iKitesurf, Windy, Wind Guru. There's a lot of resources for wind information on the internet. That'll allow you to get accurate forecasting for your beach so you're not wasting time driving to the beach unnecessarily, and will in some cases give you live wind meter readings, which then can help make educated decisions about where to get on the water. Luckily for you, by signing up for Foil Academy, you've automatically earned yourself a premium 15-day membership to iKitesurf or iWindsurf. Not only does this website provide you with live wind readings at your spot, premium forecasting, it also will help educate you with the consistency and quality of wind at your current location. Final way that's really good is you can talk to somebody who is on the water. So if you go to your spot, they'll maybe be wind foilers, windsurfers, kiteboarders, people on the water. You can go ahead and talk to them and ask them how the wind was, how strong it was, maybe talk to them about their ability level and ask them for a recommendation. Be honest, people are more than willing to help. Say, hey, I'm a new foiler, I'm here, what do you recommend, what do you think? And that conversation can often lead to good information and you can make a lot of friends. So feel free to talk when you get to the beach. Okay, so the final little piece of information that we need to talk about when we talk about wind is actually wind safety. So for those of you that don't already perform a wind sport or have felt the force and power of the wind, it's really important to have a healthy respect for the power of the wind. Although it's an invisible force, it can exert a lot of load on these surfaces that you're putting up into the sky. In the cases of kiteboarding, windsurfing, winging, we are actually putting square meters of fabric up into the air to catch the power of the wind. Another really important thing to remember is wind safety. You need to have a plan for success. What happens if the wind dies? What happens if the wind gets stronger? So you want to look at the water, you want to make sure you're making smart decisions about the wind direction and speed. And then the final piece is you want to make sure that you're keeping your eyes on the horizon and the weather around you. Most wind is driven by weather phenomenon. So whether that's trade winds or low pressure or storminess or cold fronts, however your wind is generated, it often will change throughout the day. So it's important that you keep your eyes on the water. If you see big dark clouds growing, take a sign of that. If you notice the wind direction is slowly shifting, take a sign of that. If you notice you're starting to get a little underpowered or overpowered, take a mental note. If everyone on the beach went in and you're like, wow, there's so much room out here, I'm having so much fun, there's probably a reason everybody went in. They may know something you don't. So we're talking about wind safety. We're talking about being respectful of the power of the wind, keeping your head on a swivel and monitoring condition changes and making smart decisions for your overall water safety. We want you to have fun on the water and come back to land with a smile, and part of that has to do with making smart decisions while you're on the water. So hopefully by now you've garnered yourself a little bit of information about the wind. If there's anything that you were unfamiliar with or you need more information about, feel free to go back and rewatch the segments, making sure you understand all of the concepts. We'll be applying this same general wind knowledge throughout all of the modules, so this is not the last time you'll be hearing a lot of these terms. So now that we've got our heads wrapped around the conditions of our conditions-based sport, let's start getting to know the gear that makes our sport possible.
If you're serious about learning to foil, head on over to foilacademy.com. It's your one-stop shop for everything learn to foil. On our comprehensive and structured learning platform, you'll find over 60 modules covering 4 sports, all taught by Slingshot's master instructors. You can track your progress, engage with the foil community, and learn at your own pace, all from the convenience of your mobile phone or desktop computer. Best of all, it's completely free. So follow the link in the description below and head over to foilacademy.com today.